What's good? What's good, everyone? Welcome back to a new episode of the Myles High Pod. This is Myles Munroe Jr., your host. And as you know, the vision and goal of this pod is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist. Always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right? Got a good pod today. The topic I wanted to discuss today, it has to do with finishing your breakfast. All right, we're going to talk about finishing your breakfast. So no, I'm not talking about finishing a meal. I'm not talking about finishing the first meal supposedly of the day. Finishing your breakfast is a term that I came across in the mid 90s to early 2000s, right? Street basketball had come on stream and became popular, and mostly due to the And One brand. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with, at least a lot of us that are from my generation are familiar with And One and the street ball era that existed during that time. And a large portion of that street ball or the street ball community is based in New York City, right? And New York City had this street ball legend. His name was John Strickland. And John Strickland was a well-known street ball legend in New York. He was known to play just about at every summer tournament, street ball tournament in New York. And John Strickland had this term that he used, and he would always tell his competitors or his teammates, to finish your breakfast. Jay-Z even rapped about it in one of his songs, his song called PSA. Public service announcement. The line that says, "My homie Strick told me, dude, finish your breakfast." He was referring to the street ball legend John Strickland. And John Strickland used this term of finishing your breakfast, right? And essentially what it meant was he would tell person, so in the street ball arena, it's all about the moves that you do, right? The fact that you could embarrass your opponent. And what John Strickland would refer to when he talked about finish your breakfast was, you're out there and you're shaking your competitors, you're embarrassing your opponents, and you get by them with a move that wows the crowd, and then you get to the rim and you miss a layup or you miss the shot, and the move that you made that garnered so much attention and garnered so much oohs and ahs was obsolete because the shot was missed, right? And in those moments, John Strickland would be like, man, you got to finish your breakfast, right? So essentially, it's, he was describing like when you're schooling your defender, you're finishing the shot off the dribble. So essentially, it's just finishing, right? And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about finishing our breakfast. It's easy to start things, right? We're always motivated and highly enthusiastic about starting things, right? It may be starting a new book that you have, or it may be starting a new workout regimen. You may be starting to writing a book. You may want to write a book and you get on the path of writing a book. You may want to save a certain amount of money. You may want to lose a certain amount of weight, right? And we get to this high of, man, I'm really enthusiastic about this, and I'm gonna do it. I'm excited to do it, and then you commence on that journey of whatever that goal is, right? And somewhere along the journey, you either get distracted, right? You're not motivated. You're not as enthusiastic as you were before. And you just don't end up finishing, right? And it all boils down to a couple of factors that come into play, right? Because when we're talking about finishing takes us being committed. We have to have a certain level of commitment, a high level of commitment. We have to have a high level of discipline. We have to have a high level of persistence. We have to be persistent towards the task, and we have to be able to sacrifice, right? Sacrifice our time, sacrifice the things that we may want to do, sacrifice the things that we may have to do, right? So it comes down to commitment, discipline, persistence, and sacrifice. And all of these factors and variables and characteristics are really important when we're talking about being able to finish strong, and being able to finish our breakfast, right? You know, you set out to to do certain things on your journey, and I think in the process of ensuring that we're able to finish, there are three things that I think we need to identify so that we're able to finish the things that we want to do, right? I think all of us have gotten to a point where we've started something, whether it's reading a book, whether it's working out, whether it's the goal to save a certain amount of money, whether it's a goal to lose amount of weight, and on that journey we fall off, right? All right, so in the journey of finishing, right, and finishing our breakfast, I wanted to offer 3 tips, 3 suggestions, 3 principles that I would recommend that you use, just to ensure that you're able to focus on the task at hand and able to get over the process of maybe not finishing, right? The first thing is you need to identify the problem. So I mentioned, when we set out on this task to start something new, like we're excited about it, we're engaged in the task that we're doing, but there comes a point where we may not be able to finish, right? So we need to start identifying, man, why is it that I'm unable to finish, right? It could be habits, it could be the mindset that we have, it could be a lack of motivation, or it could be a lack of support, right? And when I say a habit, so like a good example of this would be like, say you set a goal to lose 20 pounds, right? And instead of losing, like you're on that journey to lose 20 pounds, and you get to the point where you lose 10 pounds and you become satisfied with those 10 pounds and you neglect to get to the full 20. And you say, well, the goal was 20, but I lost 10. I'm content with losing this 10, so I'm going to be satisfied with this. And what that does, as you continue to do that in different aspects of your life, like you develop this habit of not finishing the task that you initially set out to finish, right? And those habits could develop into certain characteristics that we take on as individuals, where we may have started off as something as simple as like trying to lose 20 pounds but settling at 10, to where now we're much older and further down in our lives, and we take that same mentality on of settling for finishing short of the mark. So I think we need to first identify those initial problems, right? Identify the fact that you may have some bad habits that you need to break. You may need to change your mindset when it comes to finishing your breakfast or finishing strong. You may need to find a way to motivate yourself or re-motivate yourself, and then develop the support that you need, whether that's support by the people around you, support from the resources around you, the access that you may have. Identify what that lack is, what that problem is. And then once you do that, remind yourself, the second point is to focus on the big picture. So remind yourself of your why. I think a lot of these things come hand in hand with our life's journey and like discovering purpose, right? And we have to keep reminding ourselves of why we started on this road, right? So in wanting to lose weight, you might have, the decision might have been made to start because you wanted to live a healthier lifestyle. You wanted to live longer. You just wanted to better yourself, physically, spiritually, and mentally. And I think if you keep reminding yourself of the big picture, of the why, it should push you past those times when you're not motivated or you're, developing bad habits and you need to get out of those habit developments. Just remind yourself of the why on a daily basis, right? So, what I tend to do is, post little sticky notes of motivation to remind me of, what the task is. I'm doing these things to accomplish this, to achieve that. And this is why I set out on this journey. My passion is developing myself in this aspect. This is what I need to do that. So I'm constantly seeing it visually, and audibly hearing it, whether I'm telling myself or, one of my support, my wife or my family member or a friend of mine is telling me and reminding me, man, this is why you started, and this is why we need to continue. So focus on the big picture, right? And then thirdly, and this is a term that I was able to coin a few years ago, and it's simply Daviding your Goliath, right? DYG. You need to David your Goliath. And what Daviding your Goliath simply means is to break things down into simple forms, right? So you set out to achieve like this task of, let's say, losing 20 pounds, right? And you, in your mind, you're visualizing yourself losing 20 pounds. You're visualizing how you're going to look after you've lost those 20 pounds. But you're looking at it, in the large sum of the total amount of weight that you want to lose. And the way that you would do that when you're David your Goliath is you say, okay, I'm going to focus on losing 2 pounds a week, right? And that's just your focus. So you're breaking your large goal, your bigger goal down into practical forms, practical steps that you can take in order to achieve the big goal that you want to attain. So, just like David did, in the story of David and Goliath, where, you had this behemoth of a man in front of this little boy, right? And Goliath was terrorizing the nation, right? And everyone was scared. Everyone didn't know what to do. And David, looked at Goliath as lunch, basically, right? He wasn't afraid. He wasn't scared because he knew that he had the capabilities, he had the gifts and talents to defeat this giant. And he didn't allow what he saw, or even those around him, the negativity that they were spewing, to deter him from believing that he can accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. And for David, it was just, I'm going to, I have these rocks, I have this sling, I'm going to go out there, I serve a big God, and I believe that I can conquer this giant. And that's how we should, attempt or take on these things that we encounter on our journey to the goals that we've set for ourselves. So Daviding our Goliath simply means you know what you can do today, you do it, and you don't worry about tomorrow until tomorrow is here. So you're breaking down your larger goals into smaller steps and challenging yourself to accomplish those things on a consistent basis. I'm reminded of my wife. My wife and I have conversations quite a bit on this exact topic, right? Finishing your breakfast. My wife is one to be enthusiastic about starting certain tasks. She's rolling eye at me right now, but she knows it's true. And sometimes, getting down to it, she doesn't necessarily finish these tasks all the time. And it's I don't want to say it surprises me or confuses me, but it's funny to me that it happens more consistently than I guess I would think it should, right? Especially if it's something that she wants to start. So I try to be that support for her and keep reminding her of, well, this is the goal, this is what you're trying to do, and I annoy her with it, right? She gets to the point where she's like, man, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Like, don't worry about it, I got it, or whatever. And she I
tell you I have ADHD.
She blames it on ADHD. So she says, which I guess it's true, right? I think we've read a number of articles and watched enough documentaries that ADHD really exists, and it hinders certain people from focusing on a task for a longer period of time.
I mean, I go out to fulfill the task, but then I pick up my phone, or I have to fold up clothes, or just something happens.
So she scrolls social media. She finds another task to do that takes her away from the original task that she wants to accomplish. So all of these are excuses, right? And I think it's just, this is where the habits come in, right? You habitually develop a habit of making excuses. Okay, I'm not finishing this because I pick up my phone and get distracted, or I choose to do a different task, or I have ADHD or whatnot. They literally have pills, medication for ADHD, but you don't want to take those. But that I'm just saying, there are things that we can do. Like even me, right? I've had portions in my journey of trying to accomplish things where, I've grown bad habits too, right? Like I've settled for, well, I didn't, meet the mark, but I came close, so I'm going to be cool with that. Or I just wasn't motivated and just kind of did something else. But you have to really, if you go into it with a strong why, like understanding like this is why I want to do this, this is why I'm trying to accomplish this, then even when you get into those ruts where you're not motivated or you develop these bad habits and you're trying to get out of it, I think it'll make it easier to start Daviding your Goliath, because you're going to be able to really focus on the not the big picture at the time, but these practical steps that you're putting in place to accomplish what it is that you're trying to do. So I try to push my wife and even my friends around me, right? I try to be as open and as honest with everyone that's around me, and I want them to do the same for me, right? Like if they see me falling off in a certain area that I had a certain level of commitment to, I want them to push me. I want them to call me out on it, and I want them to say, "Yo, you slackening off. You need to ship up and let's get going," right? And just keep that motivation strong in me. And I think that's what is necessary for us to be able to finish our breakfast and finish strong.
Well, I think 2 points that you can add to this list is finding accountability partners, and the right ones, not ones who are going to be hard on you, but not like overly aggressive with it where you lose.
Just at me. You could just at me.
At husband. And also, I guess another thing you can do is celebrate your small wins.
Right.
Because when you look at a project in its totality, then it seems so much bigger. But when you celebrate the small steps, I achieved this, then I can move on to this. And then it's all about constantly reassuring yourself that I've done this, so I can do the bigger stuff. Yeah,
and I think, celebrating the small wins even wraps into Daviding your Goliath, right? Because you're breaking the bigger picture down into like bite-sized pictures or bite-sized steps. And as you accomplish these bite-sized steps, like you're celebrating them, right? So let's say you're trying to lose 20 pounds and you're now breaking it down to say, okay, I'm going to lose 2 pounds a week. And you focus on losing those 2 pounds a week. And when you meet that goal, like you celebrate that, and that should encourage you and push you to now go to the next week and lose another 2 pounds. And then even if you don't lose like the 2 pounds in that week, right? Let's say you only lose 1 pound, like don't allow that to cause you to not be motivated, right? I think it's all about balance, right? And understanding that, man, I may lose 1 pound this week, next week I may lose 2, the following week I may lose 3. And then the next week I may gain 2 pounds, right? It's all about a lifestyle. It's all about your mentality and just developing good habits, right? One thing I will be super honest about is that consistency is key. Like if you do something and continue to do it over and over with discipline and dedication, you're going to become good at whatever it is that you're doing, or you're going to accomplish the goals that you're trying to accomplish because of consistency. So, again, just being able to David your Goliath, don't look at the task at hand being this behemoth of this journey or this goal that you've set, right? You're just breaking it down into bite sizes. And, it could be a to-do list that you have for that particular day, or a to-do list that you have for the week. Like you could, whatever it takes, however you compartmentalize these different aspects of the bigger goal and how you could break them down into smaller bite sizes that are easily and I guess more readily accomplishable. Then you're able to start Daviding your Goliath, and eventually you'll be able to finish that breakfast of yours, right? Finishing strong. When I first heard this finish your breakfast term and did like research on John Strickland, like it's something that really stuck with me. And like I think about it on a daily basis. Like I always want to be able to finish my breakfast. I always want to be able to finish what I started. And that's always been like a goal of mine. And I get disappointed in myself like when I don't do it, even though like it may take me longer than I may want to, but eventually I'm able to finish all, if not a lot, of the things that I've started. And my goal is to encourage you to do the same. And this is me just giving you some tips on how to like visualize actually finishing your breakfast. First of all, understanding what the term means, and then being able to apply it to your life, man. Like that's what this is all about. All right, and I think it's been able to help me in my journey and with everything that I want to do. Even when I have to like stop and refocus and kind of re-strategize things, this David and your Goliath piece really helps me. Like when I visualize me finishing, right? I always want to be able to finish, and I think that we need to do whatever it is that we need to do in order to finish, because we don't want to develop those bad habits. All right. So this brings us to the portion of the pod where I want to discuss a milestone. And today's milestone, I kind of already discussed early on in the pod. But I think it's so important that I just want to reiterate it here, right? And I think if you're met with a task that seems big, I want you to David your Goliath, right? The Goliath being the large task or goal that you have set for yourself, and David being you being able to break that large goal down into practical steps. So David and your Goliath is simply developing these practical strategies and steps for you to incrementally attain or achieve the goal that you've set for yourself. All right. It's a term that I hope I came up with it. I think I did. I don't recall ever hearing it before, but I did come up with it a couple of years ago, and it stuck, man, because it just made so much sense to me, right? Daviding our Goliath. I think we all know the story of David and Goliath and how that ended. And I think we can be our own Davids, right? All of us have multiple Goliaths in our lives, right? Whatever they are. But if we have the mentality of David and just breaking things down into small steps and using those small steps to, allow ourselves to, one, be founded in our faith and in our spirituality, to be able to accomplish these goals that we've set for ourselves. And, you eventually come out on top. All right. So that brings us to the end of this pod. I just wanted to say here that, sometimes, it's hard to finish, right? It's hard to finish your breakfast, as I like to say. But it's important that we do. I think it sets a benchmark for us personally. It sets a benchmark for those around us. I always think about, the things that I'm doing and visualizing what I'm doing and perceiving how others are visualizing that, right? I always want to be a positive influence on those around me, those closest to me, like my wife, and eventually when we have kids, I want to be a positive influence on them as well. And then people that I work with, family members, friends, I'm always trying to not just tell you these principles and speak them to you, but I want to live them as well. All right. So David, your Goliath, and always finish your breakfast, guys. Okay. So as you know, the purpose and vision of this pod is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right. Until next time, you guys stay blessed.